Welcome to a Friday edition of the Scott Hamilton Show. Scott Hamilton Show on FanStream Sports. If you don't have it already, you got to get it now. The FanStream Sports mobile app. Doesn't matter if you have an Android. Doesn't matter if you have an iPhone. You can get the app. Also, you can go to FanStreamSports.com, of course. And don't forget about the FanStream Sports Facebook page. Give it a follow. Give it a like. Leave a comment. Leave a suggestion. Bitch, moan, whatever. Just do something. Week 4 college football is here, and what a wonderful lineup of games we have. And here you go. Very tech savvy here at the Scott Hamilton Show. Week 4, we have 6 ranked matchups. Ranked team versus ranked team. 1 week after having no ranked matchups, we have 6 this week. Some incredible games. We've got Notre Dame and Ohio State. We have, gosh darn it, I'm just thinking there's just so many wonderful. The 3:30 time slot alone has 3. We have Penn State and Iowa, but in 3:30 we have Alabama, Ole Miss, Utah, UCLA, and then Colorado at Oregon. And the networks have to be beside themselves thinking, man, we've got a great game, but we're going up against 2 great games. Can't wait to see who ends up winning the ratings battle for that. Right now it tells me it might be Colorado and Coach Prime, so we're going to look at that. Here's some other interesting games, though. This one snuck up on me. Florida State at Clemson. Number 4 Florida State, a 2.5-point favorite in Death Valley for supremacy of the ACC, presumably. Fascinated to see how that plays out. FSU pretty darn good. Take away a few of the little moments here where they haven't looked quite as polished. They look tremendous. Clemson begins that season with the loss of Duke and still trying to figure out who it is offensively under Garrett Riley. This could be a really good opportunity. Auburn at Texas A&M. A&M 8-point favorite. Jimbo Fisher seems like he's always got something to prove to validate that monster contract. Auburn undefeated under Hugh Freeze. They had that win at Cal. I just thought was very impressive. We're going to chop that game up and a bunch of others. We got Peter Burns of the SEC Network joining us later in the show. We'll go over that game and a few more things. Appalachian State at Wyoming. It's a group of 5 at a group of 5, but it's a fascinating game because App, I think, is just a wonderful program. And to go somewhere like Wyoming, by the way, 3-point favorites, I just want to see how that plays out. Making that trek westward, going that far. I've been to Wyoming. I've been to a game at Wyoming. Not a really easy place to play. I just think it'll be incredibly competitive. Home field advantage is the only reason I think Wyoming has a 3-point spread there in its favor. Also, Central Florida at Kansas State. Kansas State, a 4-point favorite. That's in Manhattan, Kansas. Central Florida's first league game as a member of the Big 12. So that's notable in and of itself. How will Gus Malzahn's team respond? How will K-State respond after losing to Missouri at the buzzer on that 61-yard field goal in Columbia, Missouri last week with the thicker kicker? SEC record 61-yard field goal. Well, it'd be interesting to see that. A few topics on my top of my head. Who's going to be the next coach at Michigan State? That seems to be driving a lot of conversation right now. Mel Tucker not officially fired, but it's really only a matter of time. By all accounts, he's not going to be retained. That he has breached his contract for cause, the sexual harassment allegations against a rape survivor, a victim's rights activist. Just a terrible, terrible situation. I've seen a lot of different names thrown out there. Mike Elko at Duke, that's one of the names that I've seen pop up over and over and over. He's got a good situation at Duke. It's much better than you think for myriad reasons. They don't have Big Ten money in the ACC. Duke is not a football power by any stretch of the imagination, as to where Michigan State has actually been to the college football playoff, and only a few teams can say they've done that in the decade that we've had the playoff. But he would make more at Michigan State. He would be able to recruit a different type of athlete at Michigan State. But I think Duke is really investing in football, maybe not to the point of becoming a Clemson, an Auburn, a football school. It's always going to be a basketball school. And Michigan State is, to a large degree, certainly. But it's also a football school in the Big Ten and a football state. I just don't see Mike Elko leaving. When you look at the ACC and the landscape of the ACC, he's not the top tier, and Duke is not the second tier probably right now, but it's really close. And the gap between the second tier and the top tier narrowing ever more, it seems to me. Why leave? Why not build something there? This is only his second year at Duke. The conference, way more winnable than the Big Ten, even though there still remains a significant gap between that plateau with FSU and Clemson and then everybody else. But he can build towards that. And we saw what was possible when they beat Clemson on opening night. So I don't like seeing Mike Elko's name tossed around out there. And I've seen a few other names tossed around, but I'm not quite ready to explore that. We'll go down that topic next week. Here's an interesting note. Miami tight end Cam McCormick seeking a 9th year of eligibility. 9. And I don't want to make sure that I don't misquote this because this story is incredible. It's a 9th year of eligibility. Now, keep in mind, he has not played 9 years. But what it means is that his collegiate journey, his journey as a student athlete at the college level began 9 years ago. And I can't pull it up completely, and I apologize for not being totally prepared. So we'll have to look that one up later. 9 years, though, in college. That's living the dream. That really is. That is living the dream right there. So I'll look that up again. But we're going to break down some games. Talk about Alabama Ole Miss. Is this Kiffin's time, finally? We're going to dive into the Alabama quarterback situation. Jalen Milroe back under center or in the shotgun, pistol, whatever it is nowadays, after Alabama rotated through 2 other guys last weekend against South Florida. Also going to give a look at Arkansas. I've got some questions about Arkansas. Has Arkansas hit its ceiling? They're playing LSU this weekend. What is the ceiling for Arkansas football? We're going to touch on that and a few other topics. Might even dive into a little Ryder Cup. It's next week. I love the Ryder Cup. We're going to do all that when we've got Peter Burns, SEC Network, joining us on the other side. It's the Scott Hamilton Show. Stick around.
Hello, sports fans. FanStream Sports.
Hey, you like golf? There's a good chance you do, because I said so. But what do you need playing golf? Well, you need clubs. Right? Clubs, you need balls. The thing that people don't usually think about is that golf bag. And that's what most people see when they look at your golf clubs. Like right off the bat. And if you've got a raggedy bag, it's not doing you any favors, bud. So get you a new bag. Go over to orca-golf.com. Orca-golf.com. Why are you going there? You're going there because you want a golf bag, but you want one that's kind of screams you. So you want to pick the colors.
For you
can use your own
30,
custom
60,
colors.
90.
Maybe you have a logo in mind. Maybe it's your
the merger.
logo. You're like Prince. Just have a symbol. That's the case. Dude, you can get your logo on there. Your name, just get it done exactly like what you want it done by actual designers. Nothing goes out of their factory without the approval of the founder, Erica Bennett, who is just brilliant. We've seen some of her bags. We've got one of them actually in the studio. And you know what? Dude, it looks good. If you want other people to look at your golf setup and go, man, that just screams Frank. You want that? Then go over to orca-golf.com. Do yourself a favor and use the promo code DSP10 for 10% off and free shipping. I'll say that again, DSP10 for 10% off and free shipping. So do it today because Orca Golf is the best choice in the game.
Hi, golfers. IndyCar Tim here. I want to talk to you a little bit about Golf Central Magazine. It's not just a golf magazine. It's the magazine for everything. Turf, travel, philanthropy, and lifestyle. Head over to golfcentralmag.com and check out the latest issue. Some of the regular features in Golf Central Magazine: the Golf Bachelorette of the Month, the Golf Bachelor of the Month, the Golf Cart Girl of the Month, Golf History, Grip It and Sip It. So head over to golfcentralmag.com. It's free. It's the magazine for everything: turf, travel, philanthropy, and lifestyle. Golf Central Magazine at golfcentralmag.com. We'll see you there.
All right, guys, time to talk a little bit about Turf Life. You've seen the hats on our heads. You've been or seen the video of the studio. You've seen that the decals are all over the place. Turf Life. Man, it's the brand that salutes the consumer and industry players everywhere whose lives involve turf. What does that mean? That means if you play or have a business or, maybe you're a sports educator, you're going to be on turf at some point. So you live the turf life. So go ahead and tell everybody you live the turf life by having your Turf Life window decal or, the hat or the keychain or the something. Along that lines, just go to turflifeclub.com and become a turf head. That's what it's called when you live the turf life. You're now a turf head. And you can go join the club today and snag that window decal or snag any other special Turf Life accessories, and go over there to that website, which is turflifeclub.com, and get your stuff and show everybody that, man, I'm all about that Turf Life. And then you just kind of raise your coffee mug at them and go, yeah, Turf Life, baby. That's what it's about. And then that's the end of the commercial. Ding. That means it's done in microwave talk.
Hey, listeners, make sure you check out the brand new FanStream Sports in-studio text line. You can reach us during any of our live shows or 24/7 at 214-937-0569. That's 214-937-0569. Text us 24/7 day or night, and we'll reply to you and make you part of the show.
Coming back at you. Now, more FanStream Sports.
Welcome back. Week 4 of the college football season. It is finally upon us. And I confess that week 3, I was excited because it was college football. But at the same time, I kind of foo-fooed it because, well, there weren't any ranked matchups. There were no games featuring ranked teams playing ranked teams. But there's still some intriguing games and some games that weren't even on my radar that blew my doors off. Iowa State at Ohio University was absolutely fantastic. Alabama at South Florida. Wonderful game, ugly game, but wonderful game. This week, though, we have games that we can look at on paper and go, this is must-see television. We can't miss these opportunities to watch college football this week, and absolutely positively we have to watch. And there are a couple of games, though, that are getting kind of buried. And I want to discuss that, and I also want to discuss some of the bigger games. He anchors for SEC Network. He reports for the SEC Network. He's on Sirius XM Radio. He's a man about town. He does everything. It's our buddy Peter Burns. Peter, it's been too long. It's good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Good to be on with you, Scott. It is crazy. I got like 15 different hats that I end up wearing. But you are absolutely dead on right about like last week. We're kind of like, it's almost like when you go to a wedding and you're looking around and they got like the little appetizer trays. You're like, I don't really want that. And then you're like, but I'm hungry. I'm going to eat it anyway. And then it actually ends up being a pretty decent, you're like, I would never had escargot. Like that's pretty decent, or, you know. But I looked at this and then I started thinking about it. I was like, the main course is finally here. I mean, the ranked matchups that we have, and, you know, even some of those under the radar games like Auburn A&M, which is big in our world, but throughout the world of college football may not be as big as, you know, Clemson, Florida State, or, you know, even Colorado and Oregon. And of course, the big matchup between Alabama and Ole Miss has got everybody's attention right now.
Okay. First, I got to get this off my chest. You're talking about escargot. I'm usually thinking of little meatballs, things like that.
I got invited to a fancy wedding, and I don't even know if I said it right. So I just wanted to use like a big fancy word to make your viewers and listeners think that I actually knew what the hell I was talking about. So
escargot. That's it, Peter. Yeah. Before we do get to the main course, though, there is an appetizer that I would like to discuss. I'm looking at this Arkansas LSU game, and 2-1 versus 2-1. LSU 2-1. That one loss being to Florida State, very ugly fashion, at least in the second half. My question, though, Peter, isn't so much about LSU. It's about Arkansas. Has Arkansas hit its ceiling under Sam Pittman?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think the thing that we've also always known about Sam Pittman was that he's a former offensive lineman and offensive line coach. And so he was always going to have great offensive linemen, right? Like there was no doubt about it. And so to see the line of scrimmage kind of slip over the last year or two is a little concerning. Now, I'd argue that he might have the best 1-2 duo when healthy of KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders. The problem is Rocket Sanders is still banged up. From what I talked to people in Fayetteville earlier today, they don't believe that he'll be ready to go against LSU. And that's a shame, because when KJ has Rocket, they have to, you know, really guard against both of those guys, right? And defend both of them. When Rocket Sanders isn't part of that team, Scott, KJ Jefferson has to be the Superman, and he almost pulls it off. But the problem is it's hard to pull off when you don't have an offensive line. You go back now, you're facing the LSU squad that just came off of whooping Mississippi State. I mean, they dominated both lines of scrimmage. They're back at home. They're feeling it. You could arguably say that they're the second best team in the SEC after the way that they've looked the last 2 weeks. Jane Daniels has been incredible. So I don't know if they've reached their potential, but you know, the potential for an Arkansas, in my mind right now, is a team that could qualify for a 12-team playoff, not a 4-team playoff. So I think the future will open up possibilities for Arkansas, whereas I don't think that they can find it, definitely not right here, right now, and under a 4-game playoff.
Yeah, you answered my next question. Ever the professional Peter Burns, well done. I was wondering, what is the ceiling for Arkansas as a program? Maybe we position it like this, though, Peter. How does the ceiling change when you bring in an Oklahoma and Texas into the SEC? I would argue that it might elevate the ceiling for Arkansas because it's going to open up more of Texas, more of Oklahoma with regards to.
Yeah, when they talk about recruiting aspects of it, I always find that to be interesting because I don't know how much recruits are really going to go out there and say, oh, well, now because Alabama went to South Florida for a game in the Tampa area, I can't wait to go play for Nick Saban or anything along those lines. So I don't know. I think it gets tougher. I mean, again, anytime that you're going to add two brands, and we're already seeing name, image, and likeness really help brands as far as college football. Look at Miami, look at Florida State, look at USC, look at even Colorado and Texas right now. Those brands are coming back under name, image, and likeness in the transfer portal. So I don't know. It's to be seen, right? Because I would argue, what I think and what happens are sometimes two different things, believe it or not, because I would have thought the transfer portal would immensely help the SEC. Like it would just be the rich getting richer, Scott. And I don't see that happening right now. Like, in fact, I see there be a lot of the guys that would be second teamers and third teamers on SEC rosters right now that are going to other schools, but they can start right away. And I think that's actually hurting the SEC. And I think that's one of the reasons why the conference is quote unquote down this year.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a double-edged sword there, but the coach who can definitely use the transfer portal, though, is the one who's going to benefit the most. Nick Saban. I know it's a down year for Alabama so far. Again, we're only 3 weeks in, but the way he can leverage the portal, I think of last year, his best offensive lineman came from Vanderbilt. His best offensive player, or best running back, rather,
Jahmyr
Gibbs came out of Georgia Tech. Not many other coaches could have pulled off those kinds of coups, and it's that kind of thinking that Dabo Swinney at Clemson is lacking, the ability to leverage that portal when his program, probably as much as, perhaps more than any other, could go out and get those recruits, given the facilities they have at Clemson, given they have NIL opportunities, and given that the ACC year in and year out is a winnable program.
Yeah, and the problem is now, when you see the teams that are hyper using transfer portal, i.e. like Deion Sanders, all of a sudden, man, if you're not using that, you're getting passed by every other team that's doing it and that's being really aggressive on there. I mean, again, it's almost like if you talked about the NFL and you said, all right, there's going to be 5 or 6 teams in the NFL that just aren't really going to use free agency. They're not. They're just like, I don't want to use free agency because I don't think that's right for the NFL. Well, guess what? They get their butt whooped every single year. And I think that's kind of what's happening in college football. But those teams that have been a little bit slow to adapt to it, like, it's here. Like, you got to use it. I don't necessarily love it. But at the same point, is it because I don't think it's good for the game, or is it because it's something I've never experienced before? And it's just something brand new that we're not used to right now.
Yeah, change is always unsettling. My only counter argument, and I want to get the last word from this conversation, is the Pittsburgh Steelers are very, very judicious with how they use free agency, but they're using it, to your point, more and more each and every year. Peter, again, before we get to the main course, one more game I want to touch upon. We should learn a lot about Auburn this week. Auburn at Texas A&M, the Aggies 8-point favorite. Auburn's beaten UMass. Auburn's beaten Samford, and Auburn got a really nice win at Cal. Make of that what you want. That's a pretty good win, going to the West Coast, getting a win at Cal. What should we think about Auburn at this point, and what are some realistic expectations going into College Station? I
mean, listen, if it was anybody else, I'd say, you're probably still a year away from competing, but I don't know what to think of Texas A&M. Like, I've walked the plank too many times thinking that they're going to be a legit team. For them to just absolutely just fall apart like they did the last 2 seasons, or just get destroyed like they did it against Miami. So I want to flip it the other way, because I think this is kind of a redshirt year for Hugh Freeze, right? This is about finding out who's on your roster, who you can trust, what you need going forward, and recruiting the hell out of this program. I want to flip it to the other side, because for Texas A&M, you sure as hell can't have a a program like Auburn in their first year under a complete rebuild come into your building on year 6 of the Jimbo Fisher experiment and lose that game. Just can't happen. Absolutely, there's no excuse for it whatsoever. And that's why I'm really intrigued with that game, because if all of a sudden, man, if Auburn somehow gets to this, hey, they're up 14-3, that 100,000 fans or 80,000 fans, however many are going to be over there in Kyle Field, are going to be unbelievably upset. Like this will be it'll be great people watching to see. So I still think A&M's offense is legit. I love Connor Wegman underneath Bobby Petrino's offense right now. The defense has been atrocious, but that's a game that would make College Station fans and Aggie fans really, really nervous to check in on halftime if they're down.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm looking forward to that one. All right, the main course, Peter. Ole Miss at Alabama. That is the 3:30 game on CBS. But real simple question: should the Tide be favored by 6.5?
Seems like a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems when you look at it, go, all right, I feel like this would be. I can see Bama being favored, especially because they're at home. And Vegas normally traditionally gives you 2.5 to 3 points for being favored, but a full touchdown is just kind of a wacky number to me. But I also believe that I think everything, and you talked about South Florida game last week. I'm a firm believer that was just a litmus test game. We're going to throw everything out. We know what we got in Jalen Milroe. So we're going to try Tyler Buckner. We're going to try Ty Simpson. We're going to see what they can do. Because if they can't, frankly, dominate a South Florida team with this team that we have at Alabama, well, then they don't have the spark. Okay, we know that we don't need to worry about these guys in our depth chart. And guess what happened? Buckner was bad. Ty Simpson wasn't much better. And now Nick Saban comes out the next day and says, hey, Jalen Milroe is our starter. So I think what people are not giving enough credit for is I hope I'd like to see Tommy Rees go out and change the offense to specifically tailor itself towards Jalen Milroe and the skills that he has. I think the first couple of games, and I think this entire offseason was about building things that we want Jalen Milroe to be able to do. And there's a big difference right now. I mean, listen, there's not a lot of guys that can make the third read against a good secondary. That's tough, right? I mean, NFL quarterbacks struggle with that. So I think for Tommy Rees, it's about how do we utilize his legs? How do we make it a more first read type plays? And you run the hell out of the ball. Because if it comes to roster versus roster, Scott, I don't know how you feel, but I still think Alabama has a better roster than Ole Miss does. And so I look at this and go, we think we're going to play a physical style of football. Our physical is better than your physical. Mm-hmm. We'll be able to get enough stops because the Bama defense has been okay. And I think that's why Vegas looks at this as a 7-point favorite right now.
I agree with you in some regard. Their roster is better, but Alabama to me doesn't seem to be developing players like they were during the heyday. I hate to say the heyday, but when they were just steamrolling everybody. But there are two factors, though, that I think will come into play here. One, Jackson Dart's been very impressive. Very, very impressive. Two, I agree with you that Alabama is more physical, and I'm interested to see how Ole Miss responds after they didn't look physical at all against Tulane. Tulane probably should have won that game.
The fourth quarter, they started looking a little bit better when they started pulling away and they ran the ball. But I think that's part of not having Trey Harris and not having Quinshon Judkins 100%. They're not able to do the things that they want to be able to do. So they actually kind of have to manufacture this offense as opposed to, hey, Quinshon's 100%. We're going to run the ball. I thought the offensive line was not aggressive whatsoever. I think you nailed it there in the fact that it looked not like the offensive line that Lane wants, because everybody thinks Lane's a passing guy. He's not at all. Like, he loves to run the hell out of the ball. And so that's the big thing is, can they run the ball, whether it's with Jackson Dart's legs or if Quinshon's 100% against this Bama front on the road? I'm not 100% sold that they can, to be honest with you. I still actually like Bama in this game.
That you struck on something there. I'll expand on it slightly. That you are right. Lane Kiffin loves to run the football, and his offense is predicated so much on the Art Briles system, which was about running the football. And you see his DNA all over that. I also think, Peter, it's a matter of just having tape on Quinshon Judkins. Just he's older now. They've got a whole year worth of tape. They know how they want to utilize him, how Ole Miss wants to utilize him, so it's easier to stop. Peter, just a couple more minutes, please. The last factor, and this might be the biggest, is it just Lane's time?
If not now, when, right? I mean, we were discussing that on the show over on Wednesday on Sirius XM, is the fact of like, here you've got the best, probably maybe 3 quarterbacks in this matchup. I mean, if you consider Walker Howard, Spencer Sanders, and Jackson Dart, all 3 of those guys might be better than anybody that Alabama has right now. You've got an offensive line for Alabama that looked atrocious against South Florida. They're coming off their worst game in 15 years almost. I mean, that's as ugly as I've seen them look since like 2007. And you've been close before. So if you're Lane Kiffin and you can't win after mixing it up again all this week, when are you ever going to beat them? And again, I go back to 2 years ago, Scott. Remember, he was like, grab your popcorn. And it was just so manufactured. And then he kept going for it on 4th down. It was just, he owed an apology to Ole Miss that day because he kept them from trying to win that game. Last year, he managed it better, but Alabama ended up escaping. So you look at this, and if this is not the year, then you start questioning, going, all right, well, I know Lane's fun on Twitter, but he had one 10-game win, season over at Ole Miss when he went to the Sugar Bowl in 21. But outside of that, what's his marquee win? And I don't know what necessarily that is right now. It would be Bama if he could beat Bama, but he hasn't been able to do that yet. And he's had the rosters and the strategy and the know-how. And don't forget, too, he hired Pete Golding, the former Alabama defensive coordinator, who knows everything about Bama in and out. Like, you've got a blueprint to what Milroe can and cannot do, what the weakness and strengths of this team top to bottom are. So you've got as good of a playbook on everybody as possible. Are you finally going to get through? Kirby finally got through. Okay. That's the question we'll have coming up for that main course of Alabama Ole Miss this weekend.
I'll say this before we put a pin in it, that Lane Kiffin probably owes an apology to Mike Gundy because he doesn't have a 3-quarterback system if he keeps Spencer Sanders. So
that's crazy to me, right? I was going to say poor Gundy, but I mean, Gundy losing to South Alabama at home, 33-7. I mean, that's just, there's some brutal things. And again, it makes you appreciate what Kirby is doing in Athens. And I don't know if you got a chance to see it, Scott, but the halftime video, the halftime speech he gave to the Bulldogs when they were down 14-3 to South Carolina was just a masterclass. It was, a lot of people think Kirby's all up in your face like Muschamp and he's yelling. He couldn't have been any more concise with the guys. I recommend going into SEC Network or my Twitter account at Peter Burns ESPN because I retweeted it a couple days ago, and it was eye-opening to see how calm under pressure Kirby is. And I think that's why, everybody wants to talk about Deion Sanders being the face of college football. It's absolutely still Kirby Smart until anybody proves me otherwise.
Yeah, that was I have to think that was a little bit of Saban dripping through.
Yeah,
the way
I think that's Saban. Like, I would have loved, nobody's released that tape, but I would love to see what the halftime show of and speech was Saban at USF. I mean, that'd probably be pay-per-view viewing.
Peter, before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, my favorite event in sports, other than college football, is live and breathe. Ryder Cup is next week. First of all, tell me how Peter Burns consumes the Ryder Cup, and do you have a prediction?
I mean, I'm always going to go Team USA. I think the things, and it's so hard to tell on those things because, we haven't won over there in 30 years, it feels like. I mean, it's been forever. So they always set up the course that it's going to, help the Europeans in their setup. But the thing I'll be watching is I'll try to get up and watch as much as possible early in the morning, but or late. I don't even know the way that the time works over there. I can't even remember what the time difference is, like 6-7 hours. But the one thing I'll be watching is former SEC golfer Justin Thomas, right? Like I don't think Brooks struggles whatsoever. I mean, Brooks is beloved by the guys. Davis Love III told me a couple of months ago that before they made the pick that they're like, listen, if Brooks is anywhere close, they're going to put Brooks on his team because the guys love him. But I do want to see how Zach Johnson uses Justin Thomas, and I'm pulling for JT, right? Like that's, he wants to be a part of the Ryder Cup, and it would look really bad upon him and Zach if he goes out there and he just, can't hit the broadside of a barn. So that's probably the biggest question mark I have kind of going into the Ryder Cup. But again, it's rare that as the United States sports fans, because we're all so regionalized with our team bias. It's rare that we actually get a chance to pull all for the same country, and so, or the same team. And so that's why I think the Ryder Cup is arguably the most special sporting event in the country.
Against an international team that lives the majority of the year inside the United States.
Florida. Yeah, I mean, but still, it's
it counts.
Flying, to say the least.
It's Peter Burns, ESPN SEC Network. Follow him on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. Peter, it's been a blast, brother. Appreciate you hopping on.
See you next week, bud. Bye.
Welcome back. Enjoyed our time with Peter Burns. Peter's one of my favorite people on the planet. And don't forget, Peter's going to have a weekly appearance here on the Scott Hamilton Show, and it's going to be brought to you by Blue Delta Jeans. And the good thing about Blue Delta Jeans, well, many good things about Blue Delta Jeans, each pair of Blue Delta Jeans handmade in the USA to fit you and only you. And if you're new to Blue Delta Jeans, well, let's get you fit. We can get you a pair right away. You need to visit bluedeltajeans.com. I like Peter's thinking with regards to the Alabama quarterback situation. It's such a Nick Saban thing. Takes the loss against Texas. And then here comes people second guessing. Oh, who should we play? Who should we play? So he's like, you know what? We're going to beat South Florida. We're going to whip South Florida. Our team's better than their team. No matter, unless the wheels totally fall off, we got this. It'll just be a battle maybe. Let's give these other two guys a shot. You know, they pulled out the win, but those guys, the way those guys performed validates having Jalen Milroe be quarterback one, QB1 going forward. And I think Peter absolutely nailed it with that assertion. So we'll find out. You know, my thinking, though, this game is such a wonderful time slot. And I mentioned it earlier. The 3:30 kickoff, week 4. You got Bama Ole Miss on CBS. You've got Utah and UCLA. I mean, that game in and of itself, any other week, that would be just such an intriguing, massive matchup. Would just be a phenomenal game to watch. You've got that one, and that's going to be on Fox. But then ABC has Colorado at Oregon, and Colorado is a 3-touchdown underdog. And yet it will draw as many eyeballs, at least, as Alabama and Ole Miss, as UCLA and Utah. The Deion effect, the prime effect. And here's really one of the interesting things I found out this morning, and I'm going to quickly look it up. This was something that I've been pondering for quite a while now. So with regards to Colorado, I've been wondering about the Flutie effect, the impact that it would have on applications. And we've seen it at Boston College when Doug Flutie, so it's named, when Doug Flutie threw the Hail Mary to Gerald Phelan in 1984, won the Heisman. But they saw a huge uptick in applications to be students at Colorado. Saw it again when Appalachian State beat Michigan in 2007. And you could argue that moment reshaped that program, and it helped pave the way for them to go into the FBS, to go up from the FCS. But I've been wondering if the Flutie effect is going to impact Colorado, because those are singular moments. That one pass to Gerald Phelan was one moment. That one victory over Michigan in the Big House, that was one moment, one day. This has been 3 weeks worth of stuff. More, really, when you think about it. And now we've got this game with Oregon. And I'm wondering, every time they show Deion on Sports Center, 60 Minutes, any kind of commercial, really, even if it's not a Colorado commercial, and then you have game time, pregame shows being there, how much is that worth in advertising? And there are firms that quantify these things. How much a minute of having a logo visible, or 10 seconds of having a logo visible, how much that would be if you actually paid advertising dollars, if you bought that to be a commercial. Well, according to a university spokesman, this is absolutely fascinating. According to a university spokesman, the University of Colorado, believes that Deion Sanders has brought in more than $90 million worth of exposure / advertising for that institution. Not the athletic department, not the football team, but the University of Colorado at large. That is massive. Massive. Think about that. $90 million just by being the coach. And there have been increases in applicants at Clemson since Dabo came. And I have that number here, if you'll bear with me 1 minute. But you have, when he became the coach there and they started winning, there was an uptick in applications to Clemson. Likewise at Alabama, we saw them increase in, and I'll have to get that number in a moment. But I have to think that it's going to happen at Colorado. But I hadn't really thought about the advertising prospect of it or aspect of it. I mean, there's a firm called Joyce Julius, and I believe it's based in Michigan. And like you'll see a golfer on the tee box, and you'll see a logo here. And they'll look at the size of the logo, how long it's visible, the time of day that it's being presented, how many times it's flashed, and they'll tell the golfer's agent what that was worth, and then they can go back to the bargaining table and discuss that. So $90 million already at this point. That is absolutely incredible. One more bit of news here before we sign off. I've got a lot to do to get ready for this week 4. We're going to pick games in our next show. My former intern is going to join us. Excellent story this morning, and I'm not going to get into the minutia of it, but Steve Berkowitz, the doctor of contracts, the reporter at USA Today. He can break down a deal, do all the research and records requests and so forth. He's the man. He has an article, and it's worth your time reading if you're interested in sports business whatsoever. Texas and Oklahoma were to pay a steep price for leaving Big 12 early. That's not how it turned out. Now, they were initially supposed to pay $160 million to leave ahead of schedule. Apparently, they've not paid anywhere near that, and they will not have to pay anywhere near that. And again, I'm not going to get into the minutia of it, but what they ended up paying was far less thanks to Brett Yormark, the new commissioner of the Big 12, he's been there for over a year, working with the schools to get Texas and Oklahoma out early because nobody wants them to hang around. It's like going through a really nasty divorce, and you got that mandatory separation period. But also ESPN stepping in and giving away some money to Texas and Oklahoma to make this thing happen because they weren't going to get full shares of SEC money. And for them to leave a little bit earlier, this was to make up the difference. And it behooves ESPN to go ahead and have those brands on your menu as soon as possible. So just a really good article on USA Today, Steve Berkowitz. I highly recommend you read that. Other than that, I'm just going to sign off and get ready for a wonderful weekend of football. I'm so excited for this weekend. I can't wait. But remember, get the FanStream Sports app if you don't have it. It's good on Android as well as iPhone. Hit up the FanStream Sports Facebook page and engage. Just don't pull it up. Engage, like, follow, comment, do all that rigmarole. And don't forget, hit me up on Twitter, X, at ScottH4456. I want to thank Peter Burns. Give him a follow as well, at Peter Burns ESPN. Otherwise, until next time, be safe.